People will show up. Or...
Proceed.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. There we go. All right. Well, thanks for being here. I'm Amy Birch. This is Ariana Martin, and we're traffic engineers that work with NDOT, with consultants for NDOT to help manage and carry out the traffic calming program. So we're glad that you all are spending your Saturday morning with us. And we're going to not take up too much of your time, but tell you about the traffic calming program, how you got selected, and the process from next steps, as well as the concept plan that we've put together for Phipps Drive. So we'll just get started. Some just basics about traffic calming. We'll talk about the 3 E's of traffic calming, and that's education, enforcement, and engineering. Our program is addressing the engineering of it. How do we modify the streets? The enforcement of police is also important for reducing speeding and so forth, but police can't be there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on all of our residential streets. So it's a big job. So with traffic calming, these are physical measures that we do install on or adjacent to residential streets. So we're not talking about your larger roads like roads and parks. This is a residential street program. And we apply physical solutions to try to reduce speeds over long distances and get that consistent speed. So this program addresses street by street basis, basically. So it's not necessarily a whole neighborhood, because that just really makes the program huge. We collect data and apply the program to streets that qualify for the traffic calming and show the greatest need based on the prioritization process that we'll go over. But it's the implementation of these devices to reduce speeds and increase safety. We're really geared towards improving safety on residential streets. Everybody familiar with the hub? I know you're familiar with the hub, being a Metro employee, but that's where you can go to report things like signs being knocked down, potholes, street lights out, those things. There's also a couple of other programs within NDOT, a walk and bike, if you're, sidewalks and things like that. Anna Dearman is the walking and biking manager. She's a great resource. And then beautification for organizing street cleanups and things like that. Shout out to those programs. So this program is very popular. We have a high volume of applications. We do applications twice a year, typically in January and in either July or August. So residents can apply for specific streets that they have a concern for and request traffic calming. Then there's a data collection process. So right now, after our winter 2022 closure, which was in January, there were 426 neighborhood streets that had requested traffic calming in the city. So that's quite a big demand. We selected, and Phipps Drive was one of those, 24 neighborhood projects, street projects, kind of that based on a process that data-driven process. So congratulations for having been selected. We're excited to be working with you all. So I'll talk a little bit about the prioritization process. Because we have 426 streets, how do we pick which ones have the greatest need and where to invest those resources? So we have this prioritization methodology that's based on a 100-point scale. And we have 4 main criteria that we look at, and they're weighted accordingly to this pie chart. But basically, we're looking at measured speed is capturing 50% of the score, crash history, 20% of the score, and then active transportation is 15%, and neighborhood destinations is 15%. When we talk about speed, we're comparing the 85th percentile speed that we measure on the streets. We actually go out and collect data on all the streets that have been requested if we don't already have recent data for. And we find out what the 85th percentile speed is and compare that to the speed limit. So the 85th percentile speed is the speed that 85% of the traffic is going that speed or below. So that means 15% is going higher than that speed that we're typically referencing. And then crash history, we're looking at 5 years of crashes over on that street that have occurred on that street. Active transportation is really about are there sidewalks, are there bike lanes? On Phipps Drive, there's no sidewalks. And then neighborhood destinations, how close are other things that, destinations where people might want to walk to from the street. So parks, schools, things like that. So so all that adds up, the total is 100 points, and we just rank every street as a slide. So Phipps Drive was in that top 24 selection this year, or this selection. And we have 2 selections every year, 2 selections a year, about 24 to 25 projects every 6 months, so a total of about 50. But Phipps Drive, wanted to show you some data that we collected. The 85th percentile speed was measured at 37 miles per hour. But that means 15% of the traffic is actually going above 37 miles per hour, and the speed limit is 25. So that's a pretty big differential. The volume, it was 800 vehicles per day. So that's the 2-way traffic on where we measured. And so, that's not a super high number, but given that street and the characteristics and what connects to it might feel a little high. And then the street width is about 30 feet wide, so we've got a wide road we're working with. There's a little bit of on-street parking here and there on Phipps Drive. And again, there's sidewalks on Phipps. So here is just a map showing our project limits of Phipps Drive. So between Kings Lane and Putnam Drive to the north. So we're just focused on Phipps Drive for this project. I think there were a couple of applications for Phipps Drive that was submitted over the last couple of years, and one of them also included Judd, I believe, but and it just wasn't selected based on the data and that prioritization. So let's talk about our traffic calming measures and tools that we use. So speed cushions are our #1 tool that we use in this program for a number of reasons, but they're easy to implement. They are very effective. They are, you can see how they're shown in these 2 pictures. They have these gaps that allow emergency vehicles not to be as impacted as some other devices might impact those emergency response vehicles. They're modular, so we can form them into these modular sort of lumps in the road, and we can fit them based on how wide the road is. So different streets have different characteristics. So we may have a 3-wide section or a 2-wide section, depending on how wide the street is. They are designed to be driven comfortably at somewhere around 20 miles per hour. We, with these devices, we also will include signage, warning signage. I'll show some example of that later, but warning shot signage that identifies the speed cushion and the recommended speed to travel over them. The width of them is 6 feet wide, so a passenger car is still affected by them. That's about these devices.
I think that's pretty much the basics.
Yeah.
For speed cushion.
Yes, having noticed these are working really well on West Town. Got something within the air as you go around there. And as you come down the hill on the other side of the channel. So they're really effective.
They are. We also, another thing about them is we place them in a series so that we can get a consistent speed along the length of the street. So we don't just like put one set on a street and then, cars might drive fast up to that point, slow down really fast and then pull again. So we try to put them in a series to keep vehicles from trying to top out speed between There's a lot of other, there's several other factors that we have to look at when we're placing these on streets, like location of driveways, distance from intersections, again, the width of the street and so forth. So they're 7 feet long too. Oh, come on in. We're pausing just a minute while some folks join us in the room. Thank you for joining. All right. Since you just walked in, I'll just briefly hit on this. We're talking about our toolbox right now. And these are speed cushions. They're that we drill into the pavement and fit within depending on what the width of the roadway is, but they're very effective in slowing vehicles down. They're physical measures in the street. They're 3 inches high. So, and they're sloped. So at the peak, they're 3 inches high, and then they slope down on the other side. Yes.
What's the difference between those? How close are they? Say if it's street right north and south, what's the difference?
Mhm. So ideal spacing between sets of cushions, that's what you're asking, is somewhere between 400, 600 feet. We go down to 300 feet sometimes, and we also look at, they're off there, stop signs in between, something like that. So we're trying to space them somewhere between 300 or 400 feet to 500 and 600 feet. So another tool that we use are radar feedback signs. And these are, they're roadside signage. You've probably seen them around town in a few locations, but they flash the speed that a driver is going if they're going above the speed limit. If they're going the speed limit or below, it's just going to be black. And they're typically solar powered like you see here, so they don't have that much maintenance to deal with. So this picture on the right is some interesting striping that we call it zigzag striping. We often will use that in advance of a crosswalk like this is shown. This is not in Nashville, but it's a tool just to draw the driver's attention to something that's coming up in the roadway. Slow down for.
Quick question on the radar as far as maintenance, since it is no maintenance. Typically, what is the cost for maintenance on one of those?
I couldn't answer you on that. I don't know, but they are solar powered.
Ready for on those, it's very little to no maintenance. Occasionally they would have to swap out a battery, but the only real issue that they're gonna have is if somebody hit one. You're just being able to swap it out. Rarely you'll have something pop up hard enough to hit and crack one of the panels. So those are really the only two exceptions. If something by chance were to crack it or it was time for a battery to swap out.
Yeah, because I was asking them for knowing whether or not it would be a drain on resources that would dissuade them from using one. That's one. Because that could be a good tool for PD.
So the question, in case you couldn't hear it on the virtual call, was what's the typical maintenance for these radar feedback signs? And I think we would just say it's pretty low.
How difficult is it to get those 40 signs like those?
We do have NDOT has a portable radar feedback trailer that they use. And you can apply for those on the hub, and there's a list, and they'll post that on their website about where they're going every week. But they move them from week to week to 4 or 5 streets, so you can apply for that, and we do have a few of those. But that's just, I believe we recently received some more equipment, so I'm not sure what the status of that is, but they're only out for about a week.
That'd be more temporary.
It's a temporary, correct. It's not a long-term installation. So also something that we do is some lane narrowing. When we have a wide street, do some striping to narrow the travel width, kind of make vehicles or drivers feel constrained as they're driving on the street. This, the one on the left also shows the speed limit pavement marking, 25 miles per hour. Those are on Putnam, right now, they're not on Fitz. This picture on the right is not necessarily a project that was done with traffic calming or for traffic calming, but it's a road that is 51st Avenue, which used to be a 4-lane road. It went down to 3 lanes with some, a parking lane and a cycle track bike facility on the left. Speed tables are also vertical devices similar to the speed cushions. They're made of the same materials, but just the layout and width and length of them are longer or are different, and they don't have the gaps for the emergency vehicles. We use these more on higher classification streets, not usually on low volume residential streets, but just to show you, they are longer, they're flat on top, so that a vehicle's whole wheelbase can sit on top as they go over them, so they're smoother. You can travel at higher speeds going over them, not as low as 20, it's more like 25 miles per hour. Traffic circles. These are both made of concrete, but they're devices that we can construct and put in an intersection. You treat them similar to a roundabout, and that you travel, counterclockwise around them. And they have some mountable curb for some larger vehicles, and in instances where that is needed. These are we don't do a whole lot of these because there's some specific design features. Come on in. Traffic circles, we have to have the right size intersection to put these in. So it's just another tool, but these have the horizontal deflection instead of vertical deflection to travel over them. You go around them. So they also have some reduced speeding, but they're specifically at intersections. Chicanes is another example. Again, we have to have the right characteristics of a street to implement something like this, but you can kind of alternate parking sometimes to shift the center line of the street and add some horizontal curvature to a road to slow vehicles down. So these are just some examples of those. In Nashville, places that have these, because these are not in Nashville, or the picture is not, but Fairfax Avenue over by Vanderbilt moves the parking from side to side, and so the center line of the street changes or shifts, kind of like this example. So that's our toolbox. I'll talk about our program. Like I said, this is an application process. Residents fill out an application and submit that. There's 2 application windows per year. And this Phipps Drive was selected in our most recent announcement, which I believe was on July 1st. So from there, after, we receive applications twice a year, we do our data collection and prioritization. And that's how we select the streets that have ranked highest in our prioritization process. And then we work on conceptual designs and have our first meeting. That's where we are now, in our first meeting, to talk about traffic calming and show you our conceptual plan and get some feedback from those residents and property owners that live on the street. And then we will do a more formalized design of the traffic calming concept based on what feedback we get on the concept today. Then we will organize and work with you all to set up the second meeting to show that plan to you. And then from there, we have a, if we're all happy with the plan, ready to move forward, we have a process. The program has a process to confirm that this is something that is wanted by the neighborhood. So we have a ballot process so that that, the property owners on the street can vote, yes, they want this project, or no, they don't. And that ballot process and the goals that we need are, we want 66% of full or properties that vote in their ballot to be in favor of the project. So it's 66% based on the number of votes. So, it used to be a petition process that was really cumbersome for residents to do, to go door to door and get those petition signatures. That also didn't allow us to know if it was, the project wasn't supported, or it was just a difficult process to reach those property owners. So we've recently moved to this online ballot. So you all,
Quick question
Mhm.
with the verification ballot process
Mhm.
with, could you touch on how you deal with long distance landlords, things like
Mhm.
that?
so, right, I can, and I will. You all got your cards in the mail? Everybody got their cards? No? And you live on Phipps?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. We'll see about that. But that's how we do the online ballot, is we will be mailing cards to the property owners. So if the property owner is in, Oklahoma, that's where that card went, to vote, because it's property owners that vote in the ballot. And
My understanding is there's a couple of landlords who own multiple houses on Phipps. Do they get 4 votes, not get 1 vote?
Yeah, that's another concern. Because as you see in Fitz, we have a lot of duplexes, a lot of,
Yeah.
things like that. So I'm wondering how we could square this methodology with the true participation of the community.
Right, and that's, that's why we base it on responses. Because there's some folks that aren't responsive, and we can't let that hold back a street moving forward with the process. So, that's how our process is, and so, yes, they would have multiple votes compared to your one.
Even though they don't live anywhere near where the.
Correct.
So Councilman Hall, we would need help with contacting them to make sure that they're responsive.
It's where we're gonna be done on those neighborhoods, where we reached out to those folks, and it's a slow process. But what we have to do is identify those out of town property owners, right, or companies. So there's some of them just listed under maybe a real estate company.
Yeah.
So we have to have those, separate those from the rest of the neighborhood.
Yeah.
Once we have a list of just those individual properties that are owned by a company or someone somewhere else, it allows us to target them at an earlier pace as you go through this process, because it takes so long to get those folks.
We don't have to, we'll follow up on that. We don't have to put them on hit.
Let me ask you,
Well, let's just get that, that's all I'm starting with.
Yeah.
why can't the person that renting the property,
Because they're not all.
they may not be the owner, but they're the one living there.
Yeah, and that's what you guys have decided.
Yeah.
Right, that's
I
what the,
think no more or less than privacy in that.
I don't care if they get 2 votes.
I-
Vote from the owner and vote from the renter.
that is the policy. It's the property owners that are eligible to vote. But, renters are certainly encouraged to contact their landlords and ask them to vote, things like that. Certainly be welcomed. So since we're talking about the ballot, I'll show you the properties that would be eligible to vote. So the eligible votes are of properties that have any sort of frontage on that touch the affected street, which in this case is Phipps. So corner lots, your address may be Lund Drive or Judd Drive, but because you have, that corner has some frontage on Phipps, they would be eligible to vote as well and would receive that card in the mail. So the cards would have a QR code. That would link you to the online ballot, which would also have access to the plans. So anyone that, wants to vote would be able to see the plan that they're voting for. So all that's online. There's also going to be, or is a phone number to NDOT on the card. So if someone receives their car and they're not able to access online ballot through the internet, they still have a means to reach out and vote. And Gil Thomas, who is the TrafficCalming program manager, is the person that you would reach with that phone call. And he's helped several people that we have balloting already in other neighborhoods and other streets. So that's available.
And will there be a voicemail set up to, I mean, is that voicemail based where they have to talk to him and record a photo, or they can just leave their name, number, address, phone?
I'm not sure how he's handling that. I think they might, if he doesn't, doesn't answer the phone when it calls, they can leave a voicemail and he'll reach back out.
Because we have a lot of seniors.
Hey, I don't know if you can hear me well, but I can answer that quickly. My name is Gil Thomas, who we're speaking about now. But that phone number that comes out with the ballot is my direct line. So it'll either, if I'm not available, it'll go to voicemail and I'll be able to get back to you. But if I am available, I'm able to answer directly and walk you through voting.
I got access
Thank
to
you.
any property owners on that street.
You have access to 8.
Property owners.
Great. And like I said, we're looking for 66% of the people that vote, for the properties that vote. So these cards also have a unique ID. So in order to vote in the online ballot, you would put that unique ID in the form. And that's how we're able to match the vote with the property owner and make sure that we don't have, double votes and things like that. But, all right, I think that's it on the balloting process. Any questions about that? Any other questions about that? Any questions about the program or?
I just want to clarify with Gil real quick. Hey, Gil, did you say you'll just call them back to record their vote, or if they get a voicemail, you want them to leave their voting information on the voicemail?
Yeah, so we'll have to, if you're having to vote via phone through me, we'll have to actually be speaking because I'm gonna have to read you the ballot, get your information, and then walk through the support statement and the attestation as well. So if you don't get a hold of me the first time, just leave your name and number, and I'll just have to call you back to walk through the voting.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Any other questions? We can talk about the concept that we've put together. Okay, so first to orient you, I have labeled Phipps Drive, but north is to the right. So Kings Lane is over here on the left side of the screen and Putnam is on the right side of the screen. So I've identified always stop here at Kings Lane and Phipps Drive. And then those other red signs are just stop control on the side streets. So you have stop control on on Judd as it intersects Phipps Drive. And then Phipps has a stop sign at Putnam. So that's the sort of existing condition. And then based on the street and what's the characteristics of the street in our program, we would recommend speed cushions on Phipps Drive and in a set of 3 based on the width of the street. These are the approximate locations that we would look at doing them at. So one set right after you sort of turn on to Phipps, kind of set the tone as you enter the street. It's very flat there. So that would be between Kings and Lund Drive. And that's about 250 feet from King to the first speed cushion. And you can see these yellow sign symbols. And at the bottom is our standard sign that would be placed with each one of these in both directions so that drivers have that warning of the speed cushion and the advised speed of 20 miles per hour. And then, as you know, there is a hill on Phipps Drive. And we are limited by where we can put these vertical devices because of the grade of the street. We can't put them on grade that's higher than 8%. So
It's higher than 8 there.
oh yeah.
Okay. Well, it feels like it's higher than 8.
I measured some, I measured grade up and down there, and I measured it as high as 11 in a certain location, so.
That doesn't make a difference.
So tried to, get them as close as we could. I really like having the one, first as you get into the street. I really wanted to put one on the other side of Lund, but that's where the grade is still coming downhill as you approach Lund, as you're going southbound. So could not put one there. And then you're climbing up the hill, but as it starts to flatten out, we could put one, and I've noted the addresses at 548 and 545 is a good spot to put one. And then we space them out again and have another set before you start going back up the hill towards Putnam. So those are.
42, that'll be a great spot.
Where they start speed.
So that's our recommendation, are 3 sets. And they would all have these signs like we're showing here. And so, we're spacing that furthest north one, we're trying to space it from the previous device, and also to the stop sign. Plus that grade is also too high. We can't get it much closer to that stop sign anyway because of the grade. But working together, we think, we're going to slow traffic down over the length of the street. So, hopefully between those, I know there's a big gap between the first one and the second one because of the hill, but if we slow them down so they haven't caught up too much speed before they reach the hill.
Thanks, great, because, they come through there so fast, you do on your head, you don't even see them.
I've literally seen kids out the Dodge.
Yeah, it's those Hellcats. They come through there racing them. Up there.
Get my drag race.
Nuts in the street right there.
So you guys are good with it being 3 wide, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
How do you feel about, in addition to that, some striping on the edges of those to one side or the other to kind of narrow the street? I mean, it's not a wide road,
Right.
but you want to draw attention because you got a lot of foot traffic in those sidewalks.
So,
So
got a lot of kids.
if we could have the stripe on the sides and then the 3-prong cushion across in those locations, you good with that?
Anything.
My only question would be, how does that square with people who do on-street parking?
They should be on street parking. It just hadn't been enforced, but they're gonna have to stop.
So I believe, Councilmember, that on-street parking is allowed unless it's signed, no parking. So the stripe.
Putnam is on Putnam, but not on Phipps.
Mhm.
And so that's why the suggestion about the 3-prong cushion with the striping, because almost everybody everybody does have to drive one.
But the thing is, you get so many tenants with
Like,
these different vehicles, there's a lot of on-street parking on Phillips.
And it's kind of what we ran into even recently doing short-term rental stuff, because we started that conversation around having a parking space for each space that was being rented inside for each bedroom. And we backed away from that, but it's not a bad idea. I mean, if you've got a 2-bedroom duplex, you shouldn't be parking 6 cars on, that's just gotta stop.
well, I have a lot of vehicles. I don't park in my yard sometime and then codes man hit me up saying,
Yeah.
can't do it.
Yeah, it was pavement,
Yeah.
yeah,
I got
not on the grass, yeah, that one, a slab,
Right.
or gravel.
He just hit me up the other month.
I'm hesitant to talk about.
Well, like I say, with the striping to one side or the other, it doesn't have to be consistent or take up the whole street on both sides.
Just anything.
Phipps
slow
doesn't
down.
have street parking the same way Putnam has street parking. You can barely get around, but
Yeah.
because there's so many cars on the street. So, and that's despite having this nightmare about street parking. So it's a combination of approach to everything they do. I think the striping would work for you guys, but not work on, but
Cause this is a main fairway going up and down that road.
So I'm hearing maybe a white stripe on one side or the other so what we have is a 30-foot wide road between the curbs, or around 30. And so if we did that, you know, we might would stripe out, an 8 foot. So
Well,
that might,
Or they could make it like 5, because with the sidewalks, you know, it's usually 5 or 8 foot.
mhm.
And so going with the smaller of the two, that's just substituting what we can do in terms of replacing or not doing a sidewalk. We
Mhm.
still give those kids a place to be able to move up and down, and make those drivers conscious of. The stripe is to one side, I'm not gonna drive into that stripe area, and then you got the cushions also there, keep them directly between lines.
Yeah, we can take that feedback and look at that, talk with the department about that possibility. You know, that may give the feeling that you should only park on one side of the street, and that might be the side that has the stripe. So those are things to think about.
like I said, it shouldn't be no park because the streets so narrow.
Mhm.
There's no allowed on the street. That you visiting or something.
Right, and that's the exception. You see that more of the urban core through North Nashville, Germantown, South Nashville. It's worked really well, and you can street park, it's just certain times. It's not permanently, it's not an all day, everyday thing. But those are also streets that have, well, I forget the proper name for the little posts.
Oh, the flexible delineators,
Yes.
the white
So,
flexible delineators, usually with bike
light
lanes.
poles, you gotta say, it's worked really well in neighborhoods where you see those and the speed cushions. They have a combination of the stripe lane also with those.
I don't see that going over well with the residents.
The white stripe.
Those poles.
No, we're not talking about doing.
Yeah,
poles.
okay.
The post.
If you look at the neighborhoods where you see those poles,
Yeah.
they also have the striping and or the cushions. So it's a combination that works really well in different neighborhoods. You see most of those posts in higher traffic areas or in areas where there's more sight. You see it on 28 going toward TSU. You see it back around the other side of 51st going into the Nations. So it doesn't work the same way for us, but that's just an example of how they do the combination. It's cushion and stripe, post and stripe, you know, some variation of each of those.
And sometimes with the cushions, yeah, we do the posts, to keep drivers from trying to go around them. You know, if we don't put them, you know, almost to the edge.
I'll tell you a great place to see an example of that. Go to Englewood, go down Riverside Drive. Riverside and McGavick, they did a great job with them there.
Right, so the bike lane.
With respect to this plan,
I don't think it's good enough.
Thing I think about parking on the street.
it makes you slow down.
Park on the side.
It makes you slow down. It serves myself slow. That in combination with the bumps, I think it works.
Yeah,
The only thing I would add is to add a radar so we can have PD get data, which is bad for something else.
Yeah.
That's the only thing I would say.
Like,
In addition, though.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just wondering, would possibly including a small traffic circle at Lund and Phipps Drive be possible? Because that would reduce the space between, like, his two speed cushions.
Well, the thing is, we got that school bus.
It would have to be a small one that would definitely let the school bus go through. But
Yeah.
if that would be possible, that would,
We can certainly look at that.
we just had a pretty bad crash, not us, but there was a pretty bad crash there on Wednesday. Something got T-boned going through that intersection.
Because have you considered a radar at the bottom at the intersection of Lund and Phipps to where if you did have PD decide to do a, speed trap, they can actually see radar and then catch people who do break the speed coming down Phipps or across Lund and then boom.
Yeah, I'm not sure that police would use that data or, trust that because they have their own means of measuring speeding before they give tickets or pull someone over. But we could also look at what you're asking for is a radar feedback sign coming down the hill towards Lund and traffic circle.
The other thing is people, those two stop signs, they're really field signs now. Why not put a traffic circle in and they can just be field signs and people don't have to break the law going through there, kind of thing.
Yeah. We typically our traffic circles, I think, typically still have the stop signs on the side streets.
Please,
But-
but
But it causes that not vertical, horizontal deflection for the street that doesn't have the stop sign, and they have to slow down as they go through it.
They
So,
will pass you, if you turn in your driveway, they will pass you.
I've seen some of the driving out on this side. I've been out there.
Just so it don't-
Interesting.
all the county hospitals, they did a good job on that website. Riverfront.
So I'm hearing that we like the cushions. Let's consider some other enhancements to this plan if we can, which might be traffic circle at Lund. I know we have to consider the school buses and what they can do. And then the other question is radar feedback sign, maybe coming down the hill on Phipps as you're approaching Lund. Slow down. I hear you. And then also consideration of some white striping.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Is that nothing we can do about the pushing between, it's just Kings Lane and Lawn? And you got another one up here all the way to 548. That's pretty big.
It's right. And it's because
Because of that.
it's the hill,
So can we put something in?
and I think that's what we're talking about is we can't put the cushions on the hill or on the downside of the hill because of the grade. And even when we reach the top, we also need to be able to see them about 200. We need to be able to see them 200 feet before we get to them. And I think that might not be possible. But
Rumble strip.
Yeah, what about rumble strips?
yeah, we don't really typically do those on residential streets anymore. I know they have been used in the past. Some folks don't like them because they're loud.
Yes, sir.
So if it's right in front of your house, that may not be desired.
In that space that Mr. Calvin was just talking about, would a chicane work there? Like, because that, presumably that's just a horizontal thing. You don't have to worry about people looking at the sky with that.
Right, yeah, that's a good thought. Let's look at that as well.
We need something between them. Putting concrete panels out there.
Rob doesn't hear about that.
So, yeah, so you said bumps. We don't do bumps.
Don't do the bumps no more.
Like
Yeah, no spike strips.
those are, yeah, no, we don't do spike strips either.
Sorry.
Yeah, those are really just for parking lots. That's sort of like a private. Our program does not do speed bumps anywhere. And, the nomenclature of all the different types of these vertical devices, we don't have to get into all of that, but the bumps, those little things in parking lots, we're not installing those on public streets that are designed for 5 and 10 miles per hour. That's not what we're doing.
Then you gonna turn around, go on the backside, and come out that way. See. Well, I don't think their speed is bad, but Phelps is, hey, it's just a.
Yeah, they drag race 1 in the morning.
Yeah.
He named would you name it strip drag strip?
But we know this police issue, so.
Like I say, you miss top, but you don't see it. That's how fast it is.
Yeah.
We're trying to figure out how many people are affected by these showing up to our meeting. So you may be 2 people representing 1 household. Can I get a hand raised for every household? 1 household? Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
And I know about more landlords there too, so I can get in touch with them.
All right. And then in the chat box, we have Sharon, looks like. So if you would put in the chat box, if you live on in this area, we're just trying to see how many folks we're reaching in our meetings. And I assume Sharon is also along that street, so.
There's about 40 households. Is that what you guys say on that?
That looks like about right. I cannot remember off the top.
I don't
of
know
my
if you
head.
guys also track after the recordings are shared, how many are.
No, I don't know how we can do that. Yeah.
Because that's an important metric.
And that's why we're recording these so that
It's
people
effective.
can't, attend the meetings.
Hey, y'all get the votes down on your end. I'll get them up there on mine.
All right. So, any other questions or thoughts? I'm sharing my contact information as well as Gil's, who's on the call. And he's the traffic calming program manager for NDOT. And a very helpful resource. If you have any questions after you leave this meeting, you can reach out to either of us. So again, what I'm hearing from the meeting is, from you all, is that we like the speed cushions. Can we do something else, in addition? And that may be regular feedback signs, consideration of the traffic circle, some striping or a chicane on the hill, something like that. So what we'll do from this point is, look into those additional measures to see if we can do that, and then we'll reach out and schedule a second meeting, and you'll get the cards in the mail again. You two that said y'all didn't receive your cards, like to talk with you after the meeting so we can see if we can figure that out. But you'll get cards in the mail and announcement of another meeting, and we're doing them hybrid. You can join the other way as well. That's convenient for you that day.
Is there any kind of way I can give cards to the other neighbors?
The information about what's going on. Yeah.
Right, because I don't want to do place only, he lives in DC.
Right, and so,
I have the numbers, I can contact him.
sure.
I don't want to be there, you don't live on that street, or somewhere else too.
Yeah, we'd love for you to call them and ask them to vote, because they're gonna get those cards in the mail.
Everybody wanna leave it, but leave it. Or just leave it. Anybody wanna leave it?
And these will be posted on NDOT's YouTube channel, I believe. So that's also another way that you could reach out to them on NDOT's YouTube channel.
So you can go there anytime, anybody that can't speak to a meeting.
Okay, you just because we don't need the card, the neighbors right here told us about.
Yeah.
We have been there for what, 30 years?
Right.
We didn't get a card yet.
I'm gonna talk to you about that.
It's hard because I believe that more people would have restricted that because it's a big concern.
Mhm.
So I don't think a lot of people got their.
Right.
Nobody brought their card with them, did they?
I don't mind.
I should have brought one. So, this is what they look like.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So we'll try to troubleshoot that. We have gotten some returned. I'll check to see if it's been returned for some reason. But we will.
Get all the stuff there.
That happened.
And
Same for how many houses are on the street?
I think we were just talking about 40.
40. Well, I can get 10 or 12 though. Well,
Mhm. Perfect. That's what we want. We want the community to help get the vote out. So, however means you want to do that, email blast, social media post, something like that. That's welcomed when we get to that point. So, but first we're gonna work on our plan a little, make some tweaks, take into consideration these additional thoughts about how we can make this plan even better, and then we'll have another meeting, and then the ballot would happen after that. All right.
Thank y'all.
Thank you. Were there any questions on the chat?
Hi there. Yeah, this is Sharon. I was gonna ask, is there a way to get a copy of this presentation deck?
Yes. You see my email address. If you email me, we'll be happy to share that.
Will do.
Uh-oh. I'm sorry, it's getting kind of loud in here, but breaking up.
Oh, no problem. I'll email you. Thank you.
Did you?
I think she said it's familiar.
Okay, great. Excellent. Sorry about that.
Thank you.
So.
I put in.
I'm like,